Our third 5 Minutes of Fame session. This conference is about to begin. 5 minutes of fame, 5 minutes back-to-back. School administrators and educational leaders talking about their success stories, the challenges they face in quick, packaged, for easy consumption format. We want to take a quick second to welcome our online viewers as well. And we have people joining us from Canada and the US, across the country. And we're really pleased to have 4 presenters in this next session. We're going to go 5 minutes, 5, 5, 5, 5. We're going to do an exchange asking for your thoughts and questions for the presenters. And then those presenters are going to become our panelists. They're going to sit on the stage, and we're going to drill in on the topics that you have prioritized as being front of mind for you. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Richard Hasty from Plattsmouth Community Schools in Nebraska.
First of all, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity for Thoughtexchange to include me in this. Oh, the clicker. All right, and the timer. So I was a late addition to the group here, so I'm going to target my 5 minutes and hopefully get through it. So I'm not sure if I was strategically placed after Martin for some reason or not. I don't have House of Pain. I don't have Macklemore. But I do have some information about safety and security and how we have used several school social workers in our school district to try to enhance our safety and security. So my email address is on there. I think they might be sending this out to you if you're interested. I understand that many of you are probably implementing some of these things, possibly all of these things in your school districts. My hope for you this morning is that you find something that will spark a conversation that you'll either have with one another or take back to your school district, and you might reshape it and reform it to make it into something better for your own district based on your needs. So without further ado, Plattsmouth, Nebraska, we are the county seat, even though we only have 6,480 people. We are just south of Omaha, Nebraska, 20 minutes to get to the border, and to get to downtown, it's about 25 minutes. You can see the median incomes, and you can see the disparity. We have a lot of single-parent families, and I think from that you can see who the single parents are primarily in our school district. We don't have a lot of ethnic or racial diversity. We do have some, but the majority of it is significant socioeconomic diversity. You can see the Main Street. We are classified as a historic Main Street town, so we do get some visitors that come through. And then with the floods and the interstate by Omaha, they rerouted the people from the interstate through our 2-lane highway through our town, so that was quite interesting. We have an early childhood and a Head Start center, elementary school that's Title I, again, based on our socioeconomic demographics, middle school and high school, and you can see our total enrollment. I was beginning to think I was the smallest school here, and then I heard 1 or 2 other people that have a similar size, so that was helpful. I like quotes. I think this one really hits it. People at the top of the mountain didn't fall there. They got there with a lot of help from a lot of other people. And another quote that goes along with it is pulling people up the hill or up the mountain, you're also helping yourself get there. So I think that's important to keep in mind as we go through here. Traditional approaches to safety and security, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because almost everyone has one or more of these items, either because it's a law or a policy that you have. So we're going to pass on to that, to the stuff I really want to talk about. One thing I want to point out, this slide is at the beginning and the end of the presentation. The items that are underlined all have links, so if they send this out to you, all you have to do is click on the link and you're going to get information about that topic. It'll take you to a website. So we have 4 school social workers, and you saw because of the size of our enrollment, that's pretty unique. Per capita, I'm not going to say across the nation, but I would say in Nebraska, per capita, we probably have more school social workers than any other school district in Nebraska. And I'm finding that even beyond our borders, that's probably the case with a variety of districts as well. Another thing that's a little unique for our size, we have 2 school resource officers, 2 full-time school resource officers. And the other items, actually, I'm not going to read them all because we're going to hit them here in a little bit. A little bit of the history on our school social work. At the early childhood and the Head Start, that school social worker also works. That's what's called the Plattsmouth Learning and Universal Support Center. So if you notice, I'm also the special ed director. I've been in special education for over 20 years. And we have a facility that it contains a program where we support students with pretty severe disabilities. So they help out there, and then they help out general and special education students at the Academy for Learning that is at each site. I'm going to have to speed it up, so I'm going to let you read that history. Clifton Strengths, this ties right in. I had a 15 or 20-minute conversation with Martin yesterday on stress, having positivity. Clifton Strengths, you can see 20 million people throughout the world have taken this assessment. Some of you have heard of it. It helps you be the best version of yourselves, which is something I heard yesterday. I would encourage you to click that. You can click this link too, or the ones that are in the beginning and end of the presentation. There is research that shows 3 times more likely to have an excellent quality of life and 6 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs. So our goal, it's one of our strategic priorities of the 4 from our strategic plan, is to have students and staff focus on their talents on a daily basis so they become strengths and they have near perfect performance in what they're doing. It ties right into the creative brain piece that Martin was talking about. And then you heard about the Gallup student poll. This is tied into that as well. We have a teammates mentoring program. You can click on the link. I'm not going to go it. It's school-based, one-on-one. Every administrator is required to be a mentor, and we have people from the community that come and assist. The Say Something Anonymous reporting system. This goes to law enforcement. Every time there's a tip that comes in, it's free, by the way. It's from Sandy Hook Promise Foundation. It goes to our school social worker, it goes to me, and then one other administrator. I'm going to wrap it up here. Another great quote. You can read through that. We do have a screening process, but I'm out of time, so I left a lot of detail in there for you. You can read through that. Screeners at every level. And then based on that screener, the school social workers, the 4 of them at each level, can have group counseling, individual counseling, and then we have staff support and training, which we've had throughout the year. So again, all the links are there for all of the information that we have. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. If they send that out to you, you'll be able to access all of that information. It wasn't a quick process to get 4 school social workers. If you look at the history of what we had in our school district, it's a slow process, but quitting isn't going to speed it up. And we knew we had a lot of needs, and this is from Dr. Tom Osborne. If you're familiar with Nebraska football, he's a legend even throughout the country as far as football coaching. Work hard, stay focused, and surround yourself with good people. Just like we do with everything, that's what happened when we found our school social workers. So again, thank you for the time. I appreciate it, and I thank you to Thoughtexchange as well.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you so much. All right, off to a good start. Here we go. So, second 5 minutes of fame presenters, Miss Kathy Veronesi from Regional School District 13, Connecticut.
I would like to start by saying goodbye. I'm leaving this morning at 9:30, and relationships are important to me, so it was really great to get to know so many of you, and safe travels. I'd like to talk to you or tell you the story about our district and how we have dealt with declining enrollment. I'm in a district of 1,600 students that previously, over 10 years ago, was over 2,000 students. So we've declined by 400 and will anticipate another decline of 200 students in the next 5 years. 6 years ago, we had 6 schools, and when I was hired at that time, I didn't realize that the school was going through an enrollment study. And so 2 weeks into my tenure, I was sitting in an auditorium, and there was a presentation about the declining enrollment and the potential closing of a school. And at the time, what I realized is that when people are dealing with the potential close of a school, there are a lot of emotions that get triggered, primarily loss, and there is a sense that people are a part of something that's far greater than they are, and that's an affiliation with school. And what happens is that gets translated into anger. And so my survival brain, 2 weeks into my tenure, was the thought that I would go back to the board and say, I was having a stroke when I signed my contract. I made a mistake. However, we did close the school, and I created a process by which we did it. We had a power hour meeting every Friday where we sat down and said, okay, what do we need to do? Who needs to do it? And we did it. We closed the school, we had a celebration, and everyone lived. We're closing another school in 2 years, and the school that will be closing in another 2 years is the school that is truly the beloved school in our district. Probably kind of like, Tom, your grandmother's house was for you. And so this has been a highly, highly emotional discussion for us, because it means that we'll be losing a school that people dearly love, and it happens to be a school that has a program that people can choose to attend. It's a hot school and integrated day program. So we did a little strategic visioning. I created a team to talk about what's really important to us. What do we believe in? What are our assets? What do we think is important for all children? Okay, so 3 was that we had a vote at a board meeting where one of my board members, who is a guy who has a tremendous sense of urgency, jumped the gun a little bit and moved a vote to close the school before we had really gotten to that point in the process. And so basically we lit a bonfire, and which meant that the next board meeting we had 3 news crews and 300 parents who came out, and they were very angry, and there were children in pajamas who were crying about their school. And, but what their creative brains were really saying was, this is so important to us. This is critically important, and we don't want to lose something where we have a 48-year history. And so we made the decision to harness that, to find the passion, to hear beneath the angry message, the passion. And so we began to really look at, again, focusing on what is really important for our future and the future of our children. And ultimately what happened in this strategic visioning process was that there was an undeniable conclusion that was drawn. And that conclusion was that having 2 programs where people can choose where they go when kids go into kindergarten really didn't serve a purpose for us any longer. And when we were talking about the allocation of resources, it made more sense for us to allocate resources, not to busing, not to keeping more buildings going than we needed, but to focusing on bringing staff and students together. So after a 48-year history, we're looking forward at something else. All of our students now will go through all of the same schools together. We've begun working on the process of Portrait of a Citizen, which some of you have done, Portrait of a Graduate, and we're using Thoughtexchange to do that. That is something that has helped us as well, to really look at and listen to the voice of the people, to say, this is what we want for children. And so how do we do that? How do we do this for all children?
Awesome. All right. Next up, we've got Terrence Davis from Beaumont USD in California. Terrence.
So before I get started really quick, where's Chris Smeaton? Chris Smeaton, you're an animal on Twitter. This guy is a Twitter animal. I want to talk to you after, find out how you do that. 2 things. Andy yesterday talked about, really quick before they get the slides up, talked about expense and investment. I didn't know where he was going with it. Then he switched it up, and I was like, that was good. I made a good choice last night, so that's why I feel good. So that's good. And then the other one, when you do the thought exchange coming up, I want you to think about not a safe space. Because how do I know it's a safe space for you? We don't know if it's a safe space. It is a brave space. So make sure you're brave in your answers. That way we can have real conversations and deep conversations. So, Beaumont Unified School District. We are located in Southern California, and our theme really is about shared commitment. How do we share the work? We can't do it alone. It's about being shared. So I start with students, because that's what we're all here for. Everything we do, the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars we do, we spend, it's about our kids. And so I start there all the time. And so this story, I paid attention and I followed directions for this, and that's pretty rare because I typically don't follow directions. So this really is about a story about our leadership team. We're approaching about 70 members of the team. There are over 1,000 employees in Beaumont that serve 10,640 students. And I thought we just have this great team, good people. We have team building activities every year. One of this lady right here is one of our board members. And we just bring everyone in and have a really good time, focus on what we do for kids. And then last year, and I'll just say this is not a plug, this is a story, but more importantly, it's my truth. And so I'll say to you that Thoughtexchange, we started in the beginning of last year. And so I started to play with it a little bit. I'm like, okay, Heidi, where's Heidi? She came, was great, spent a lot of time with her, let's try it out. And so I played with it. We would have leadership meetings, and so I threw out a Thoughtexchange to our leadership team. And so these themes emerged, and this theme came up. And the thing that came up was about trust. And it was like, there's no trust. And I'm like, are you kidding? What do you mean there's no trust? I'm thinking we have high trust. I've been in the district. I'm starting my 8th year in the district, starting my 4th year as superintendent. I don't know how that's happened, but that's what it is. So how do we not have trust? And I stopped and thought about that. And I thought about it takes time to build trust. I thought I was walking over as assistant superintendent of human resources and going into the superintendency, and it was just going to be all good. Oh, everything's just fine. No, it was like I was starting over because there was a lot of fear. We talk about fear. There was a lot of fear about what is he going to do? How is this going to work? And the other thing I thought about was, that's crazy. There's all this love we're trying to build and have. All this love, but there's no trust. And so with that, and the reason I was a little upset about that is I always start with this quote. I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. Whenever I do presentations, especially to an angry mob of people, if it's parents, whoever it is, I start with this. Because the perspective that we have is different. I could be talking about one thing here. If there's 60 or 70 of us in here, all of us are going to have a different perspective about it because it's based upon our own experiences. It's really important. So I'm like, how do we not have trust? So last year, we were doing this book study. So we do a book study every year. And there were some themes that emerged from this book. This book, you have to read it. Do it with your team. Have your principals read it. And the big themes that emerged was know your team. You've got to know the people you work with. You have to know them, and they have to know you know them. 2, grow your team. Build that capacity. Empower them. Let them fail. It's okay. We're not first responders. We're not. No one's going to die. Things happen. But we're there to support, move forward. Take care of your team. And the biggest thing, take care of your team, know their families, all of that. But the biggest thing for me is really about who's your client. And so we had an activity. And it really changed the tone of this trust thing. It was about who your client is. So we had people thinking that, and I'll use this is tape, so I hope she doesn't ever watch this, but our transportation driver said, the students are my client. And after they read this passage, no, the client are the bus drivers. The clients of the teachers are the students. The client of the site administrators are the teachers. The clients of anyone in the office that works at the central office is not the students. Yes, students in mind, but it's the sites. They do the work. They get to the classroom. So I just want to show you this really fast. Starts as a square, ends as a circle. We're arguing about this is what it is, but if you turn over here, it's different. If you look at it from this perspective, it's different. That's life, folks, and we got to understand that when we're dealing with that. So the last thing, if we can get to the last slide, is our theme for this year is mind and boat. And what that is, in essence, is one team, one mission, a shared commitment. Someone talked about superintendency, women in superintendency, and diversity. Look at this, diversity. This is about, in order to be able to do something, you have to do it collectively. I can't do it alone. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Right on. Thanks so much, Terrence. All right, our fourth 5 minutes of fame presenter today is Mr. Randy Wright from Olentangy Local School District in Ohio.
Thank you. So I know when I heard Andy announce we're going to have a fourth person this morning, there was a collective groan like, what? We've gotten used to 3, and so who's this guy? And He's the one guy who's not a superintendent, and I get to follow 9 amazing speakers and leaders. So hopefully in the next 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 55 seconds, you're going to get something out of this. And I promised my wife, who goes to conferences all the time as a teacher, I'm going to leave you with something you can take back and do. Because what I'm going to offer you is an investment in time and investment in a free resource. So as we look at this and as we talk about, I want to give a little bit of information about our district. All right, we are located just north of Columbus, Ohio, and in 4 weeks, we're going to open our buildings with over 22,000 students. We serve those students with 121 administrators across the building selection that you see there. We have been the fastest growing district in Ohio for 20 years, and it shows no sign of letting up. Over the next decade, we can climb to over 28,000 students, and we will be the 4th biggest district in the state of Ohio, behind only the big 3. So as you look at this, I'm primarily responsible for everybody on this 3rd bullet. Now, I'm a recovering high school English teacher and a recovering high school football coach. I know nothing about anything other than high school, let alone transportation, let alone custodial work. But what I do know a little bit about is leadership. And so one of the things that our leadership team, when we got together in summer of 2015, we said we want to take a look at how we can revamp a lot of the things that we do. And we had a revision of our strategic plan, and one of our strategic priorities became fostering leadership development. And that meant for everybody in the organization. The 6 of us on our senior leadership team, all of our administrators across the district, all of our 2,500 employees, and our 22,000 students. So as we looked at those opportunities, we came up with our leadership development journey. And we chose the word journey very purposefully. We weren't starting a program, we weren't doing a curriculum, and it wasn't going to be an activity. It is something that's going to be able to take us through the 3 years that we've been doing this and the next 7 years of my career, and then somebody else is going to get to do it. So this is a systematic approach where all of our administrators, regardless of their role, can practice the art of leadership. Those that know experts in the field, say if you want to be a professional athlete or you are a virtuoso in music, 10,000 hours of practice. We don't get an opportunity to practice leadership. Typically, our practice in leadership is an after-action review where it's, what the hell were you thinking? So we wanted to have an opportunity to talk about the things that affect us as leaders and talk about how we can approach it proactively before we're tied up in the moment. So we wanted to speak a common language. We know this was going to be grounded in theory, but not bound to theory. We wanted to be very flexible, depending on the needs of our clientele and our leaders. And we were going to focus on culture, mindset, and developing soft skills in all of our administrators. So the first thing, and this is your free initiative that you can take back and do, everybody in our district is taking a DISC assessment. Why? The guy that helped us kick all this off said, take a DISC assessment. We've done it. We've talked about it. Every administrator has taken it. It allows us to create a consistent language. I did steal a little graphic there because I got to see Hamilton Tuesday night, and 3 of the 4 people on this slide are in Hamilton. So if you get a chance, there's a sneak preview. So we use this to develop skills in communication, building relationships, trust, and most importantly, developing highly functioning teams. So this content I talk about every time we have an opportunity to get together in little snippets. So the 2 main things that we focus on this are broken down. Here's one other content. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This was a book study we did with our groups. But we spend all of our time in these 2 things. Legion meetings, which are quarterly sessions where we bring groups together. We do it in 8 sessions. So we have about 14 administrators in a group. And this is everyone. Transportation, this is elementary assistant principals, this is our superintendent. And we cross-categorize them from different DISC styles and different responsibilities in the district. We meet for 90 minutes, we talk a little bit about content, we have a little bit of fun, and we talk about the leadership issues that we're facing. So then my personal pleasure then, I get to follow that up with principal one-on-ones. I'm in charge of 26 principals. When we're done with Legion meetings, I go out to 26 buildings, spend an hour with each of these principals 4 times a year. I talk about their leadership style, talk about concerns they have, follow up with evaluation issues, and do anything I can to support them. And what I've found out, these conversations, very reflective, very powerful. And so in the last 4 years, I've spent 466 hours of my time talking about leadership. because this is what I found out as we go through. From Jack Welch, before your leader, success is about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you guys for your time today.
Thanks so much, Randy. All right, click into the agenda. Go to Friday morning, the 5 Minutes of Fame panelists. There's a link on the screen as well. And share your thoughts and questions. Once again, we have Richard, Kathy, Terrence, and Randy. If you want one of them in specific to ask to answer your question, then just put their name in the thought that you share. Let's take a few minutes to share a thought or two and star at least 10, 15 thoughts. All right, if you haven't started starring thoughts, go ahead and do that. Finish up the thought you're on, jump in, star a few thoughts, and we'll dive in here in a sec. Let's take another 20 seconds. See if you can get through at least 10, 20 or 30 would be better. We'll do a final refresh here. And 10 more seconds. All right. One last refresh. And here we go. All right. Yeah, one last refresh. Certainly lots of sentiment around the excellence of your presentation, so thank you for that, first of all. I'm just going to dive into the all thoughts. Okay, cool. Great. How do you move emotional/angry people towards a focus on what's best for students and the district? Kathy, let's start with you and let's drill in just a little deeper on that.
Sure. I think that, is this on?
Green light? Green light.
Okay. First of all, I think the understanding that anger as a presenting emotion is probably not the emotion where that's really where something is originating from. That it is a fear of a loss, of fear of not being affiliated with something. So first of all, I think we realize, just as I think all of us do, if you're angry and someone says, calm down, yeah, you're mad. You're more mad. You're like firecracker mad. And so it was critically important to just listen to people. And that, I think, was the greatest antidote to anger, was to say, I'm listening to you, and to be rephrasing to people. I understand that you love John Lyman School. I understand that this school has been so important for your child. And then, but simultaneously saying, and let's have a look at this, and that the facts don't change. The thing with the declining enrollment's very interesting. People don't believe it. If you say, and enrollment projections are freakishly accurate. It's amazing how accurate they are. And we'd say, like, hey, folks, look, it said that our enrollment was going to decline, and it actually did. And people would say, but there are still houses for sale in our town. So facts, keep coming back to the facts, keep coming back to the goals of what's important, and keep listening. And really, people can only stay mad for so long. And then they would rather feel better. They'd rather feel part of something hopeful than be mired and stuck in anger.
Let's just camp out here for a second, because I think the question really relates to all the different issues that you've presented, and certainly the emotional response to safety and security, or to even just programming and those kinds of things. So please, I'll open it up and go ahead and drill in.
Just a quick aside. The most challenging job I ever had was a special education director in a district that was extremely entitled, extremely high autism population. We had all kinds of legal cases, just crazy. And when I would go into IEPs and sit with parents, and we're talking about parents who've dealt with their student not being what they thought they were all of their life and not succeeding, there's an emotional piece that you're not going to change. And so one of the strategies that I learned over time is I would go into the classroom prior to the IEP and observe the student. I would spend time with the student, ask questions about the student. And when I'm in the meeting in the IEP, I would sit and listen, but inside I'm having this reaction and my feet are like twitching, because it's like, oh my gosh, but you just listen and listen and listen. And then calmly you can say, validate something that you resonate with, say something about their student, and provide a suggestion. We're not going to change the world in one glimpse. You offer a suggestion, and most of the time after that they were saying, thank you so much for everything you've done. Well, I haven't done anything. I just listened and I shared something that I thought would be beneficial.
From a slightly different perspective, and fortunately, we don't have to deal with what Kathy has to deal with, but as you see the numbers, we deal with the opposite. We're opening buildings, and when you open building, you redistrict. So you take somebody from a place that they've been and send them to a new building, or in our last redistricting, we sent them to an existing high school from high schools they didn't want to leave. And so same kind of thing, the emotions, it goes through listening. And we're very fortunate. We have very recently updated our brand, and our tagline now is Flourish Here. And in our district, we truly believe that every student, every parent, every employee can flourish in our environment. And so we have to get our people back to understanding that is we're going to take care of you, we're going to take care of your child, and they're still going to be able to flourish here. So we focus on that message.
So I've been in my current district for 14 years. I was student services director for the first 2 and superintendent for the last 12. Prior to that, I worked for an educational service unit, and I was an administrative consultant. And I would go to a 7-county area to various districts when they had situations like this. when the parents in the school district really weren't talking to each other at all. And there was a high level of anxiety. I mean, the parents might not even talk to the school district. So just leaning on my background, because all of my special ed background has been on mental health and behavior and those types of things, all behavior is communication. And in most instances, I'm hesitant to say always or never, but in most cases, people want something or they want to get away from something. And listening, like all three of them have already said, eventually, and I'm going to lean on my Gallup strengths, and I would encourage you to explore that, individualization is my number one. And it's a research-based assessment, decades of research. I want to hear their individual story. Now, that's me. It doesn't work for everybody, but I want to hear their story. And then I can understand why they feel the way that they do, and I can hopefully figure out what they want or what they want to get away from and try to present information in a way that's most likely to elicit a positive response, and maybe we can address whatever their concern is and get them what they want. It doesn't happen every time, but I would say in most cases, by the time you get done, I don't know if they're just tired or they realize that somebody does actually care, but I usually do get to, and I think everybody else probably does as well, you eventually figure out what they want or what they want to get away from, and sometimes it has nothing to do with the reason they appear to be upset to begin with. So that listening is huge.
Right on. And that really factors into this third thought about measuring improvement in trust. Any of you, Terrence, maybe we can start with you, or any of you want to drill it deeper on that? All right. Thanks, Kathy. Have a good trip home.
So, that's the Gallup poll. That's my understanding. We have not done a lot of work in terms of measuring that. It's really anecdotal at this point. However, that is a strength that is something that we need to explore, not only for that, but also as we shift in this movement, if you will, about how we connect students to skills and not test scores. And so how are we going to measure that? And having a conversation yesterday with some very knowledgeable folks in terms of co-constructing that together. And my understanding is Gallup has a lot of tools that allow you to do that, but I don't have that experience.
Trust, that's a great question. That might be the question of the century right there. How do you measure trust? I think you can do it anecdotally. We have a lot of research-based data we can use, but what it comes down to, are people supporting your vision? That's what leadership is trying to get people on board with your vision and communicating that such that they want to join you. If they want to join you and they're ready to go forward with the journey that they've helped create through all of the input and feedback that we know we're getting all of the time through a variety of forums, whether it's Thoughtexchange or other surveys, I think you can tell whether you have trust in what you're doing or not, and whether people are willing to follow the group that's leading, not just me, everybody that's in the leadership team, community members, whoever that leadership team is. I'll give you an example. We had a bond issue, and I've never had a bond issue that I tried to pass ever in my tenure as superintendent. They, in my school district, previously, a little over 20 years ago, they tried 4 times before they passed it. And there were people in our district that said, well, I'm surprised it passed, because it passed at almost 60% the first time. And what happened was I, along with some other constituents and a team of people similar to what you've created, community members, staff, went to Rotary, went to Legion. And I didn't tell them to vote yes. What I said was, here's what we have. If you like this, vote for it. If you don't vote for it. So it was pretty transparent, and I think they believed me. I think I generated trust because a lot of those people had never really interacted with me, and I'm going to digress to one yesterday because I had a conversation with somebody about this in one of the 5 minutes of fame. The celebrity. We are celebrities in some people's eyes, whether we like it or not, and they are going to form opinions of us when they don't know us. And just like people form ideas or opinions about celebrities in the movies or on TV, do they really even know what those people are like? Probably not. But so what can we do to positively impact that? And it's get out there, interact, and try to show them that we're real people.
I do definitely want to address before, so I don't know what the time is what if a member is not leading like a pirate? Definitely want to address that, but I think we're on the Gallup poll and measure.
No, let's go for it.
Go. All right. So the question is, are you able to measure trust? And we actually have two two opportunities. We have a workplace satisfaction survey that we've been doing every other year. So we'll be doing it for the third time this fall. And we have, across 2,500 employees now, we have received, in Franklin County, Columbus area, we have received a top workplace award from our employees. So that's one level of that. With our building principals, where I'm directly involved, we do a yearly 360 summary, evaluation summary. And what our principals have seen is growth in numerous areas, and it talks a lot about academics and curriculum, but where we've seen is being able to communicate in a way that is effective, instilling confidence in their leadership. So we do have an opportunity where we can see, and we have seen growth across all of our administrators as a result of this work.
That's great.
Well,
yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, when I see something I get excited about, I want to talk about it. So it really deals with working with teams and making decisions. Prior to becoming a superintendent, I spent about 8 years as a human resources professional. And one of the things that I've learned over the course of time, it's not always about what the person has done wrong or bad. It's about how you treat the person on that way. Once that decision is made, you have to have the courage to make the decision. I hear all the time about, well, we just move the person to this side, or they just go here. We don't play the dance of the lemons in our district. We don't do that. You stay there and you address the issue. And we try to provide as much support as we can. However, when it's time, so yeah, this is being filmed. There were some moves that were made recently that were like, those things that you just don't touch. And when you have those things that you just don't touch, I go, that's something I want to touch. Because you have to walk through it. If you don't do it, you're failing students. And so people think in their heads, you just make these decisions because you want to and you do them. No. I go through so much information from the board to cabinet, to extended cabinet, to students, to staff members, to community members. I gather so much intel and information prior to making that decision. The decision isn't something that it's me. It's based upon what is the right thing to do because of the impact that's happening in the organization. And that's something you have to do. And I definitely will say this. If I make a decision like that and I lose my job for it, then that job isn't for me. Then I go somewhere else where someone's going to have some courage and do the right thing to move things forward.
That feeds right into this next thought about how you hold your leaders accountable as you go forward with that work.
Well, just like everyone else, we have targeted goals for the year. Try to focus on, again, I'm going back to the strengths because our administrative team, and we're trying to get everybody, actually I've trained the staff in the district because I'm a Gallup certified strength coach, focusing on what their goals are for the year. They usually have a student performance goal and a professional development or a leadership goal. And how can they best use their talents to be effective in leading their teams? That's how we determine that, and having those ongoing conversations. We don't quite do it quarterly like you said you were doing. That's impressive, but it sounds like that's your full-time job is going out and doing that. But trying to do that twice a year is ideal, and that's what I've already set dates when I had the discussions about goals. I was already sending people calendar invites for December and January, and I think I freaked a couple of them out already because we're going to have conversations about, are they meeting their goals? Are you getting the work done that you said you wanted to accomplish, whether it's related to student performance, mental health, your own professional development, leadership development, or development of the team. So that's how we do it in our district.
I would just say it's not an annual thing. It's not a twice a year. It's every day. And so if something comes up, we have a conversation. Conversation all the time. Good, bad, ugly, whatever, we talk all the time. So people know exactly where they are.
Right on. Last word to you, Randy.
That's scary in itself. So when I look at that and we talk about accountability, some people, I look at it as more as a negative. So I try to avoid that. We really try to set the conditions for every member of the organization to be successful. And if we're doing that, we expect that the results will speak for themselves. And we're fortunate. We have great students. We have great leaders that enable us to have good data. We don't have the best data. We're trying to strive and improve every day. But we hold them accountable by setting expectations, leaving them to do the work. And I do want to echo what Terrence said, is that if there's a conversation that needs to happen about something that's going sideways, we have it now. No one is surprised by an evaluation in our district. And when teachers are surprised, then we talk with principals. You got to do better. You got to do it faster. So our goal is to put people in a position to be successful and follow up with them on a daily basis.
Super rich conversation, as always. Richard, Terrence, Randy, and Kathy Veronesi in absentia. And with that, Matt DeBrise, come and bring us into our next session.